The subway car screeched to a halt beneath the city's bones, its lights flickering like tired eyes blinking against the night. It was just past 11 p.m., the hour when silence takes over and only the weary roam. Ethan stepped inside, the stale warmth of the train brushing against his face like an old coat. He wore the uniform of the unnoticed, a bookstore apron folded under his jacket, shoes worn thin, and fingers ink-stained from sorting dusty pages all day. He slumped into a seat with a sigh that came from his soul more than his lungs. But then he saw her. In the far corner of the car, half-shadowed beneath a broken overhead light, sat a girl no older than 20. She was curled up, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, chin buried in the folds of a once elegant trench coat now dirted and torn. Her long hair fell like a curtain, hiding most of her face, but not the trembling. Not the faint, muffled sobs. Ethan glanced away at first. New York taught people to mind their business. But something about her stillness felt different. It wasn't the sadness you passed on the street every day, it was the kind that wrapped around your ribs and stayed there. He cleared his throat softly and moved a little closer. "Hey, sorry, not trying to bother you," he said gently, voice warm but cautious. "You okay?" The girl didn't look up at first. Just nodded quickly, though the tears kept falling. Then, with hesitation, she raised her head and Ethan saw it. The kind of pain no one should carry alone. Her eyes were red, rimmed with confusion and fear. But in that one glance, he also saw something else, hope barely clinging on. I need to call someone," she whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of the tracks. "My phone, it's gone." Ethan didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his cracked old smartphone, and offered it to her with a quiet smile. "Go ahead," he said. "Whatever you need." And in that simple moment, something shifted. The girl held the phone like it was something sacred. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the screen, hesitating before tapping the dial pad. Ethan sat quietly across from her on the subway bench, careful not to speak, not to interrupt whatever storm was unraveling inside her. She typed a number from memory, no contacts, no history. Just digits carved into her mind from another life. The phone rang once. Twice. Then someone answered. She turned slightly away, shielding the conversation with her body. Her voice was soft, nearly swallowed by the low rumble of the train moving through the tunnels. But Ethan still caught fragments, words in delicate French, spoken through a throat tight with emotion. "Oui, c'est moi. Camille," she whispered. "Je suis en sécurité. Je suis parti. Je ne pouvais plus rester." "Yes, it's me. Camille. I'm safe. I left. I couldn't stay any longer." There was a long pause. She closed her eyes, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Her fingers gripped the phone tighter. "I know Papa is furious. But I had to go. I didn't want a life decided for me. I needed to breathe." Another pause. Then she nodded slowly, as if the voice on the other end could see her. "I'm not asking for money," she said. "Just tell Mama I'm okay." Ethan shifted slightly, pretending to look out the window, but his heart was tied up in her words. He could tell this wasn't just a runaway teen, it was someone escaping something gilded, something heavy. Not poverty. Expectation. After a few moments, she ended the call. She stared at the black screen, her reflection staring back, puffy-eyed, vulnerable, free. Wordlessly, she handed the phone back. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice steadier now, though still fragile. "You have no idea what that meant to me." Ethan gave a soft nod. "Sometimes," he said, "a voice on the other end is all it takes to feel human again." And for the first time that night, she smiled, just barely, but it was real. Outside, the wind had picked up, tossing wrappers and dry leaves along the empty sidewalk. Camille's steps were small, unsure, but she walked beside Ethan as if drawn to the calm in his quiet presence. They ended up in a tiny all-night diner tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop, one of those forgotten places where the fluorescent lights buzzed louder than the customers. Ethan slid into a cracked vinyl booth and motioned for Camille to sit. The waitress poured coffee without asking, her expression blank but kind. "I can cover whatever you want," Ethan said. "It's not much, but grilled cheese here never disappoints." Camille hesitated, then nodded, her hands still wrapped tightly around the sleeves of her coat. The warmth of the diner seemed to thaw her little by little. As they ate in silence, the weight of the night settled between them. Finally, Ethan asked gently, "Want to talk about it?" She looked up, eyes wide, searching his face for signs of judgment. There were none. "My name's Camille," she began, her voice low. "Camille Renard." The name meant nothing to Ethan, but she said it like it should. I'm the daughter of Philippe Renard. He owns luxury hotels across Europe. The kind of man who doesn't hear no. Ethan blinked, not out of surprise, but from the sudden turn. That's a heavy name to carry. She nodded slowly. He arranged for me to marry a man I barely know. Said it would strengthen the family legacy. I tried to play along, but every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me anymore. Just a pawn in their empire. So you ran. I did, she said, her lips curling into a mix of fear and pride. Bought a ticket to New York with cash. Figured if I was going to start over, I'd do it where no one cared who my father was. Ethan smiled gently. You came to the right place for that. For the first time all night, her shoulders dropped a little. Not because the weight was gone, but because someone else was now helping carry it. ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's scene 4, a room and a kind soul expanded to approximately 350 words, continuing the story's heartfelt and emotionally grounded tone. Scene 4, a room and a kind soul. The night had grown colder by the time they left the diner. Streetlights cast long shadows on the cracked pavement as the city hummed quietly around them. Camille walked a little closer to Ethan now, not out of fear, but trust. Her voice had softened. Her guarded posture had relaxed. But the weariness in her eyes hadn't left. You don't have anywhere to go tonight, do you? Ethan asked gently, already knowing the answer. Camille shook her head. I was just going to figure it out. Ethan hesitated only a moment before he spoke. You can stay at my place. It's small, nothing fancy, but it's safe. She looked up at him, surprised. Why would you do that for me? He shrugged with a modest smile. Because someone should. And tonight I'm someone. They walked the rest of the way in silence, the kind that feels more like understanding than absence. Ethan lived in a studio above the bookstore he worked at. The stairs creaked with every step and the hallway smelled faintly of old paper and lavender cleaner. The apartment was humble, just a twin bed, a beat-up couch, a bookshelf packed to the brim, and a kettle that whistled when it felt like it. Camille stood in the doorway, blinking like she'd stepped into a different world. Not luxurious. Not grand. But warm. You can take the bed, Ethan said, grabbing a blanket from the closet. I'll crash on the couch. You don't have to, eh? I want to. Later that night, Camille lay awake staring at the ceiling, the unfamiliar comfort almost unsettling. On the nightstand beside her, she found a note scribbled on the back of a bookstore receipt. Be free, but be safe. The world needs your heart. E. Below it, he'd written the names of local women's shelters, job resources, and a safe contact at a nearby youth center. She held the note to her chest like a lifeline. No one had ever asked for nothing in return. It had been nearly a year since that night. The seasons had passed unnoticed by most, but Ethan remembered. He remembered the girl with the trembling hands and the quiet strength. He often wondered where she'd gone, if she'd found what she was looking for, or if the city had swallowed her up like so many others. He never expected to see her again. The bell above the bookstore door jingled on a crisp fall afternoon. Ethan looked up from the register and froze. There she was. Camille. But not the same Camille. Her coat was clean and elegant. Her posture confident, though her eyes held the same softness. She was glowing, not from money or makeup, but from peace, purpose. In her hands, she held a hardcover book and a white envelope. Hi, she said, her voice steadier than he remembered. You probably didn't think you'd see me again. Ethan smiled, stunned but warm. I hoped I might. She walked up and placed the book on the counter. The cover read, Unwritten Roads. The Journey to Becoming My Own Name, by Camille Renard. Inside the envelope was a formal invitation, her speaking tour with the United Nations Youth Council. She was now an advocate for runaway teens, helping young people break free from cycles of control, fear, and silence. I told the world my story, she said, eyes brimming with emotion. But I started with yours. Ethan blinked, overwhelmed. Mine, she nodded. You lent me your phone, but you gave me so much more. You reminded me I was human, worthy of kindness. You gave me a safe place, no strings attached. That changed everything. There was a long pause before she stepped forward and hugged him. Tight, sincere. As she pulled back, she smiled with tears in her eyes. Sometimes, all it takes is one person doing the right thing without expecting a reward. Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. because in that small, quiet bookstore, among the worn pages and kind souls, a full circle moment was written, and this time in permanent ink.